The night it began, the sky over Montana split in half, not with thunder or lightning, but with light, a cold, white fissure that carved through the clouds as if the heavens had been torn open by invisible hands. The first to see it was a retired Air Force pilot named Eleanor Ellie Grant, standing on the porch of her ranch house with a cup of coffee cooling in her hands. She'd seen re-entry burns before, the orange streaks of spacecraft and meteor showers, but this was different. This light was structured, deliberate. It was as though something vast was trying not to fall. Within hours, NORAD reported multiple unidentified entries across the upper atmosphere. No transponders, no radiation, no recognizable propulsion. They burned bright, then vanished, leaving trails of ionized mist that shimmered like aurora. The media called it a cosmic malfunction. The military called it Containment Protocol 7, but Ellie, she called it wrong. By dawn, she was proven right. At 05:32, something massive tore through the northern ridge of the Bitterroot Range. Not an explosion, but a sound like mountains breaking. The tremor reached as far as Missoula. When rescue teams arrived, they found a crater a mile wide filled with fog that smelled faintly of ozone and rain. The earth was glassed over in rippled patterns like frozen waves, and in the center of that crater, half buried in molten rock, was a ship that defied understanding. It wasn't metal, not in the way humans built. It looked grown, a curved, living thing of translucent shells and veins of faint blue light, pulsing like heartbeat through its skin. And from its shattered flank, something emerged. Someone. By the time the first drone footage leaked to the internet, the world was already holding its breath. The figure that stumbled from the wreck was tall, slender, and wrapped in layers of a flexible, silvery material that shimmered with internal light. Its face was obscured by a translucent membrane, its movements uncertain, not threatening, just lost. For 2 hours it wandered the crash site, searching. Then it collapsed beside the wreck, pressing a hand against the hull as though trying to wake it. It didn't know the word for Earth. It didn't know it had fallen on a planet still learning how to be kind. 2 days later, the United Nations Emergency Council convened for the first time since the lunar crisis of 2061. The alien survivor was airlifted to a classified facility outside of Colorado Springs, under heavy guard but also heavy scrutiny. Scientists called it the visitor. The military called it the subject. Ellie Grant, now reactivated as a liaison due to her clearance and experience with exo-atmospheric systems, was asked one question by the Secretary of Defense. "Can we talk to it?" Her answer was simple. "We can try." The first conversation didn't happen in words. It happened in gestures. The being, later identified through partial translation as Kayan-Ara, or simply Kayan, used light patterns from its body to express responses. Blue for calm, gold for acknowledgement, red for grief. It never resisted testing, never attempted escape. What it did do, however, was draw. Intricate shapes in the air using fine dust particles it generated from the surface of its own skin. Holographic patterns that spun and danced until they resembled star maps. And every time Ellie pointed to a star and said, "Home?" Kane would shake its head. Until finally one night it traced a cluster near the Orion Arm and dimmed its glow to a melancholy blue. That was when Ellie realized it wasn't trying to find home. It was trying to tell them it had no home left. By the end of the week, humanity's telescopes began to notice faint anomalies, distant flares near the same region Kane had indicated. Flares that looked like weapons fire, signals that looked like war. Ellie presented her findings to the council. "If I'm reading Kane's star maps right, its people are gone. Maybe not extinct, maybe displaced. Which means this ship wasn't an invasion. It was an evacuation, but before the truth could settle, something else appeared in the solar system. A second vessel. Detected at the edge of Mars' orbit. Larger, angular, radiating energy signatures that didn't match Kane's. And when Earth tried to hail it, it didn't answer. The object entered high orbit within 3 days. Its silhouette was jagged, built for purpose, not beauty, all sharp spines and dark metal that absorbed radar. and trailing it were fragments of debris. Like shrapnel in formation, the Pentagon declared a DEFCON 2 alert. The newscasters called it the second fall. Kane called it, through trembling, gestures and pulsing red light, the hunters. Whatever had destroyed, Kane's people had followed their refugee craft through the rift in space, and now they had found the ones who had sheltered it. The first contact between humanity and the hunters didn't happen in battle. It happened in orbit, when a satellite relay transmitted a modulated frequency in response to the approaching fleet. The translation algorithm parsed only 3 coherent words: return or burn. The ultimatum was clear: hand over the refugees or face annihilation. In that moment, Earth's leaders stood at a crossroads unseen in all of human history. The pragmatic choice was surrender. The alien Kane and its companions, 3 survivors found later in cryostasis within the wreck, were not human. Not of Earth. Humanity owed them nothing. But Ellie stood in the war room that night, watching the feed of Kane sitting silently in containment, its head bowed beneath sterile light, and said something no one else dared to. If we hand them over, we're not saving our planet. We're just proving we've learned nothing from our own wars. Silence followed. Then, one by one, voices agreed. Not because they were unafraid, but because something in that choice, that impossible stand, felt right. The next morning, Earth's transmission echoed through the void. Broadcast in every language and every frequency, they came to us in peace. We will not return them. If you seek war, know that Earth stands between them and harm. The world held its breath again. Somewhere above the clouds, the hunters' ships shifted formation, dark shapes against the stars. The invasion everyone feared might come with fire never came at all. Instead, the void filled with static, a silence so loud it felt alive. Ellie watched from the mountain base as the alien sky pulsed faintly with light. Kane standing beside her, their reflection mirrored in the viewport glass. "We may have just doomed ourselves," whispered General Hayes beside her. Ellie didn't look away from the stars. "Or we just remembered what it means to be human." The night after Earth's declaration, the stars went silent. No transmissions. No movement. The hunters' ships, 6 colossal forms eclipsing the upper atmosphere, remained locked in orbit like an executioner's blade waiting to fall. From the ground, they looked like new constellations, cold black geometries against the halo of the moon. Every telescope on Earth turned upward. Every government went to alert. The internet drowned in panic and prayer. For the first time in history, humanity faced extinction not from itself, but from a decision born of compassion. And yet, beneath the fear, something extraordinary began to stir. At the base of Cheyenne Ridge Command, Ellie Grant stood before the containment chamber that held Kane and the other 3 survivors. The chamber was quiet, the air humming faintly with power. Kane's light, once bright and pulsing, now flickered like a candle in heavy wind. "Talk to me," Ellie whispered, pressing a hand to the glass. "Tell me what they want." Kane's head lifted, eyes glowing faintly beneath its translucent veil. Its voice, translated through the machine that had taken weeks to calibrate, came out broken, strained, but filled with emotion. "Hunters. Not Empire, not Army. They are Purge. Sent to erase what ran." "Ran from what?" Ellie asked. Kane hesitated. Its body shifted color, blue to gold, then a deep crimson of memory and grief. "From ourselves." The room fell silent. Later, in the war room, Ellie faced General Hayes, UN liaison Dr. Marcus Levin, and a wall of officials from every continent. Kane's words still echoed in her head. "They destroyed themselves," Ellie said softly. "They made something that turned on them. The hunters aren't conquerors. They're machines. Cleaning up what's left." Levin frowned. "You're saying those things orbiting us aren't alive?" "Alive in a different way," Ellie replied. "They were made to serve. Then the masters vanished. Now they serve the memory of extinction." A grim silence settled over the table. Hayes exhaled through his nose. "Then diplomacy's off the table. You can't reason with ghosts." "Maybe not," Ellie said, "but they can listen." In the following days, Earth's skies filled with defense. Satellites realigned into a global web of communication and surveillance. Fighter squadrons were scrambled to standby positions across all major continents. The orbital stations, the legacy of the Interplanetary Expansion Initiative, became temporary shields. Their solar arrays pivoted like spears of light. But amid the fear and readiness, something else took root. Civilians lit candles in windows. Schools reopened under new safety protocols, but with songs of unity echoing in classrooms. Across nations long divided, humans began to remember each other. "We don't have to win," Ellie told her command team. "We just have to not lose ourselves." At 23:17 GMT, 3 nights after the ultimatum, one of the Hunter vessels descended. The world watched as the sky above the Atlantic burned, not with fire, but with pressure, the air rippling as though space itself bent inward. The object, half a mile long, slowed above the ocean, leaving tidal waves rolling toward the coastlines of Portugal and Morocco. Then it stopped, suspended, waiting. The first radio signal arrived moments later. A transmission composed of modulated tones that the AI translators rendered into a single haunting message: "Yield the refugees, or Earth becomes memory." Ellie stepped forward to the microphone, her heartbeat steady despite the enormity of what she was about to do. "This is Commander Eleanor Grant of the Terran Coalition." "We hear you." She paused, choosing each word like a blade. "You say you erase what ran, but they didn't run from you. They ran from extinction." The response came like thunder. "Extinction is correction." "Not if there's still life," Ellie countered. "And they're alive. They're not your enemy anymore. They're just trying to start again." Silence. Then you are part of the error." Static swallowed the channel. The ocean beneath the ship began to churn, light fracturing through the clouds as energy built along its spines. Hayes barked orders from behind Ellie. "Evac the coast! Bring railguns online. We'll hit them with everything we've got." But Ellie stood unmoving, watching Kane's holographic projection on the monitor beside her, its light trembling. "There has to be another way," she whispered. Then Kane said something unexpected. "Let me speak." They opened the secure link. The alien's form shimmered into existence aboard the orbital relay, transmitted directly toward the Hunter vessel. No translator, no human words, only patterns of light, pulsations, and sounds that resonated like music through the frequency spectrum. The Hunter ship slowed. The vibrations ceased. For 10 long minutes, no one spoke. Then, through the relay, Kane's body began to flicker violently, colors collapsing into blinding white. The data monitor screamed with overload warnings. "Cut the feed!" shouted Levin, but Ellie raised a hand. "No, look." On the screen, the Hunter vessel's spines folded inward, reshaping. What had been a weapon system now looked almost like an eye. An immense, staring aperture focusing on Kane's projection. Then, without warning, the alien vanished. The feed went dark. An hour later, Kane's physical form was found lifeless in containment, its light extinguished, its body cold. The Hunters, however, did not attack. They moved. Their ships realigned into a new formation, circling Earth not as predators, but as sentinels. Then, one by one, their energy signatures faded. Their hulls dulled, drifting like colossal monuments in orbit. In the silence that followed, humanity realized the war had not come, not in destruction, but in understanding. Ellie stood again under the night sky, now free of menace, watching the faint silhouettes glimmer faintly above the horizon. Levin approached quietly, his face hollow from sleepless days. "We still don't know what it did," he said. Ellie didn't answer at first. Then she turned to him, eyes reflecting the stars. Kane gave them what they needed, a reason to stop fighting. Maybe forgiveness," he frowned. "You think machines can forgive?" "Maybe not. But they can stop obeying." Weeks passed. The world began to recover from the tension, from the fear that had united it. Borders reopened. Global cooperation surged to levels unseen in centuries. Scientists began studying the inert alien crafts in orbit, learning cautiously from their silent presence. Ellie was awarded the Stellar Cross of Service, though she refused the ceremony. Instead, she visited the crash site where it all began, the crater in Montana, now turned into a research sanctuary, a scar upon the world that had healed into something almost beautiful. There, in the twilight wind, she found a fragment of Kane's ship, smooth, faintly glowing as she touched it. A whisper of light sparked beneath her hand, and for an instant, she heard a voice, not in sound but in memory. Not mistake. Refuge? She smiled through tears. Maybe Kane's people had never meant to come here. Maybe the stars had thrown them off course. But perhaps some mistakes are the universe's way of making miracles. That night, as Ellie looked once more at the quiet sky, she wondered if the war had truly ended, or if it had simply changed form. Somewhere above Earth, the dormant hunter ships floated in eternal silence, guardians or graves no one could tell. But one thing was certain: humanity had chosen to stand for something greater than survival. And for the first time, the stars no longer felt like strangers. 3 months after the night the sky stood still, Earth was no longer the same world. The hunters' ships, silent and inert, hung above the planet like celestial tombstones, orbiting in frozen synchrony. They had not moved, transmitted, or shown life since Kane's final act. Astronomers called them the halo of the fallen. To the people below, they became something more, a daily reminder that mercy had been stronger than fear. Across the globe, the mood was reverent, cautious, hopeful. Humanity had looked extinction in the eye and found, within itself, an echo of grace. And yet, for Eleanor Grant, the woman who had stood between two species and chosen compassion, peace came with an ache she couldn't silence. Kane's sacrifice haunted her dreams. Sometimes, she saw the alien's silhouette standing at the edge of an ocean made of light, whispering in words she could not understand. Other times, she awoke with her heart pounding, convinced she could still hear the hum of the ship buried in the Montana soil, the one that had brought everything to Earth's doorstep. The site had been transformed. What was once a military exclusion zone had become the Orion Refuge Project, a vast scientific and cultural effort run jointly by the United Nations and what remained of the Space Defense Coalition. The goal was twofold: study what Kane's people had left behind, and learn from the mistake that had nearly destroyed them. Ellie returned there often, though officially she was retired now. She walked the perimeter at dusk when the light turned the ridges gold and the alien hull shimmered faintly under the dust. It was quiet, save for the soft wind and the low hum of containment generators. That evening, she wasn't alone. Dr. Marcus Levin was waiting by the observation platform, a mug of coffee steaming in his hand. His silver hair caught in the glow of the setting sun. "You still can't stay away, huh?" he said with a small, tired smile. Ellie shrugged. "I keep thinking if I stand here long enough, it'll start breathing again." He followed her gaze toward the half-buried ship. "Maybe it already is. The tech teams say its internal power core still emits a pulse, weak but steady. Like a heartbeat. Like a memory," Levin corrected softly. The conversation drifted into silence for a while. Then Levin reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small device, a crystal-like shard encased in transparent resin. "What's that?" Ellie asked. "Something we found last week near the command cradle, buried deep in the structure." He handed it to her. It wasn't part of the hull. It was placed there. The shard glowed faintly as it touched her skin, like it recognized her. And then, impossibly, she heard a voice, soft, distant, like the echo of a remembered song. "Eleanor, remember the sky." She froze. Levin's eyes widened. "You heard that too?" Ellie swallowed hard. "Yeah, I did." The shard pulsed once more and dimmed. For a moment, they simply stood there, breath held, both of them understanding what it meant, but afraid to say it aloud. Kane had left something behind, not just memory, a message. By the next day, the artifact had become the center of a renewed effort inside the Orion Refuge. The linguists and xenologists swarmed the lab, but no algorithm could fully translate the data encoded inside. It wasn't language in the human sense. It was emotion turned into frequency, thought made physical. Ellie watched for hours as waveforms danced across the holographic display, forming impossible fractal shapes that looked like constellations. "It's not random," she said finally. "It's a pattern, like the maps Kane used to draw." Levin nodded. "You think it's another star chart?" "No," Ellie murmured, eyes narrowing. "I think it's a doorway." That night, she stayed in the observation dome long after the others left, listening to the hum of the alien ship. It seemed louder now, more insistent. She placed the shard on the console. "Kane," she whispered. "If you can hear me, what did you do to them? To the hunters?" For a long time, nothing. Then, just as the clock struck midnight, the lights in the dome flickered. Every instrument went haywire. The alien ship outside began to glow from within, the same pale blue pulse she remembered from that first night months ago, and on the horizon, the stars shifted. At least, that's how it looked, as if the whole sky bent and realigned for a breathless instant. The communication panels exploded into life. Lines of alien code scrolled across the glass like rainfall. Then, finally, a single phrase resolved in the human alphabet: "Not gone." Ellie's heart froze. "Kane?" she whispered. The ship's light intensified, flooding the valley in radiant blue-white glow. "Kane, talk to me. What does it mean? What did you do?" And then came the reply, trembling across every frequency, so quiet it was almost tender. "Hunters? Freed. Memory. Broken. They wait. Wait for what? You." By morning, the phenomenon was visible worldwide. Every hunter ship in orbit had reactivated, not in hostility, but in synchrony. The halo of the fallen lit up like a necklace of stars, each vessel emitting a low, harmonic resonance that traveled through the atmosphere. The sound was felt more than heard, a vibration that stirred the oceans and rippled through glass windows, soft and rhythmic like a heartbeat magnified to planetary scale. Global panic returned for a moment, but only for a moment, because the ships did not move, did not fire, did not threaten. They simply sang. Scientists confirmed that the signal contained a repeating waveform, identical to Kane's biopatterns, an imprint of its consciousness, woven into the machines that once served. Destruction. Somehow, in its final act, Kane had given them something alien civilizations had never known: the ability to choose peace. Ellie stood once again at Cheyenne Ridge Command, watching the live feed of the sky as it shimmered in gentle blue light. She felt tears she didn't bother to hide. Levin spoke beside her, his voice shaking. "It's beautiful." "It's more than that," she said softly. "It's them. It's all of them. The refugees, the hunters. They're part of us now." He turned to her. "Do you think they'll ever come back?" Ellie smiled faintly. "Maybe not as we knew them. But they're here, above us, watching, teaching." Weeks turned to months. The song of the halo continued, slowly fading into background resonance, a gentle pulse that became part of Earth's natural rhythm. People began to time prayers, births, even festivals to its beat. It became the sound of unity, of a planet that had once stood between two lost civilizations and said no to the easy path of surrender. Children were born who grew up never fearing the stars. The name Kayanara was written into the UN Charter as the first non-human protector recognized by Earth, and Ellie Grant, now an old woman, spent her final years in a small cabin overlooking the crater that had started it all. She never sought fame, never gave interviews. She just watched the night sky, which now glowed with faint, permanent traces of the halo's light. One winter evening, as the auroras shimmered overhead, she sat on her porch and whispered, "We kept the promise. Kane, you're safe here." The wind stirred softly, and for a moment, she thought she saw a faint shimmer, like the reflection of a tall, slender figure standing by the edge of the hill, watching her with eyes made of light. She smiled. Welcome home. And the stars, those ancient witnesses, seemed to shine a little brighter. Epilogue, the legacy of refuge. A century later, children born beneath the halo no longer called the visitors aliens. They called them the first refugees, and humanity, now reaching into the same heavens with new purpose, carried with it a creed etched into every starship's hull, words spoken once by a soldier who chose mercy over survival. They came to us in peace. We will not return them. If you seek war, know that Earth stands between them and harm. And thus, for as long as the halo sang above the world, humanity remembered that sometimes the greatest defense of all is compassion.